Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to a special edition of Scott's Tennis Selections here, as we will be doing a French Open bracket breakdown since Roland Garros starts in about 4 hours. So, instead of going through each individual match and every round, we will simply just start out with the quarterfinals, and I'll tell you what I think my projected matchups will be and why I feel that way about certain players as opposed to others. So, with that being said, we're going to dive right in, and we're going to start out with the top quadrant and work our way down. The quarterfinals matchup that I have is between Novak Djokovic and Fabio Fognini. And the main reason, at least in the top part for Djokovic, I don't see anybody could really challenge him. You might argue that Coric could potentially give him a run for his money, but overall, I don't see it. I think Djokovic is too solid. I think that Djokovic is he's in great form right now after he beat Tsitsipas in the finals of that tournament a couple of weeks ago. So for me, I have to go with Djokovic against Fognini. Now, Fognini, people might be wondering or thinking that that's kind of a bold call because of the fact that Alexander Zverev is in his section there. But overall, I think Zverev is one of the most overhyped players on the tour. Thanks, Don. I appreciate that. Yeah, baseball has been pretty solid over the last couple of days with leans. But this is just going to be a tennis video, so I'm going to try to get this done as soon as possible. So Fognini, if you look through his section, Delbonis is tough. Fritz and Agut, I think, could be tough. But Fognini has been fantastic this season as he absolutely destroyed Nadal on clay about a month ago. Whereas Zverev, he did just beat Jari he beat Jari actually yesterday as he won in Geneva in a 3-set tiebreak. Very thrilling match there. But overall, Zverev has not looked great in recent weeks, and he's also been known to underachieve in tournaments. If you want to know how many quarterfinals Alexander Zverev has been in Grand Slams, despite being a top 5 player in the world, same as us. Never made a quarterfinals. I just think that he's too mentally fragile, and he seems to fall apart in very tense moments. Today was a perfect example. Even though he won 10-8 in the breaker, he was up 6-3 and had 2 serves to potentially get. And he was up 6-3 in the breaker, ended up choking it and having to win 10-8. Easily could have won. It seems like in pressure moments, he doesn't do well typically. I think Lajovic could beat him. I think Lajovic might beat him as he's a tremendous clay court player. But overall, I think that Fognini is just so talented on clay. He's tremendous. And if Fognini could actually get his head right for one tournament run at least, then I think Fognini has the talent to beat Zverev in a 5-set match or even Lajovic in a 5-set match. So I personally like Djokovic versus Fognini there. Moving on, I have Dominic Thiem versus Juan Martín del Potro. In this quadrant, I don't really see much in terms of resistance. People might argue that Verdasco could potentially give a run. I don't see it. Maybe in his prime he could have, but Verdasco's kind of old. In terms of the other people, Gael Monfils, very solid player, very solid Frenchman, but once again, with his, whether it's antics or just personality, he's more interested in entertaining people than actually winning matches. And I think that he will have a match where things don't go his way, and I would not be surprised to see Monfils lose to a Verdasco, and I think that he would lose to Thiem as well, as Thiem is just an absolute powerhouse on the clay. So I would lean to Thiem on that side. And moving on with Del Potro, there are some sleeper picks if you want to go with like a Bolelli or somebody. Kakanov is his biggest opposition, but he hasn't looked amazing on clay this season. He did have a nice 3-set win against Munar a couple of weeks ago, but overall he has not looked great. And I know that Felix just lost yesterday in the final against Benoit Paire, but I still think he's too young. I think that his shot selection could use some improvement, and I think Del Potro, with his experience on the court and his health finally back at 100%, will be able to beat him. So I will personally be leaning to a Dominic Thiem and Juan Martín del Potro there for a matchup in that quarterfinal section. Moving on, I like Tsitsipas against Roger Federer, actually, in this section of the quarterfinals. Now, this section is tough, and I could be wrong here because of the fact that you have to deal with people like Cilic and people even like Berrettini or Schwartzman or Cecchinato, or there's a lot of talent in this region. But for me, I think Tsitsipas, based on what he's shown over the last couple of months, has shown that he's an elite-level clay court player. Wawrinka's also in this section, but Wawrinka has not looked the same. I know that he won the French Open a couple of years ago, but he's had some injury issues. He's 24th in the world. He's very solid. I think that he will end up matching up against Tsitsipas, but overall, I think Tsitsipas will be too strong there. It also helps out Tsitsipas the fact that Cilic and Wawrinka have to play each other first before they can actually match up against him. So I think that will help out Tsitsipas making the quarters, and I expect Wawrinka and Cilic to play each other in a battle there. So I personally like Wawrinka in that matchup, but that's a toss-up. I think Tsitsipas will be able to handle the winner of that match, as that will probably be a very intense match that will leave the winner tired, and I think Tsitsipas will be able to capitalize. But in terms of the bottom section here, you can argue that Berrettini could give Federer a run for his money, or maybe a Schwartzman. But at the end of the day, Federer is finally healthy. He looked pretty good on clay, won a thrilling match against Roger Federer. Roger Federer won a thrilling match against Benoit Coric in his last match before having to retire against Tsitsipas. Yeah, Paul, I'm just going over the bracket breakdown. If you want the play of the day for today, you should check my previous video. I'm just going through a bracket breakdown. We will go through the rest of it. So for Federer on this section, I think that Cecchinato could, but he's not a good enough server. And Berrettini could, but I personally just think that he's too young. Schwartzman's not a good enough server. I think Federer will end up playing against Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals of that region. Moving on, you have the last region, which we will be covering, and I am going with the favorites here. I'm going with Nishikori going up against Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals of the bottom section here. There are some underrated players like Goffin and Guido Pella and Medvedev, but overall, I think at the end of the day, I think Nishikori is too fundamentally sound. I think that he will be able to handle whatever the opposition throws at him, as he has looked really solid over the last couple of months. Moving on, Nadal. I don't really need to justify this. Nadal is guaranteed to go up against qualifiers in the first two rounds. He also will probably have to go up against Goffin, but he's definitely a better player than Goffin is. And other than that, his biggest opposition is Guido Pella. I mean, Nadal's Nadal. I think Nadal's pretty much a lock to make the quarters or even the semis. So I will lean to Nadal there. So we will go back for the semifinals and talk about who we think will work it out. So in the matchup between Djokovic and Fognini, I got Djokovic. I think Djokovic will simply just hit too many balls in play. I think Fognini's shot selection will hurt him, as he will have a huge number of unforced errors, and I think Djokovic will be able to win that one. Other than that, you have Dominic Thiem against Juan Martín del Potro. I like Thiem here. I think this will be a very tough match, but for me, I think Thiem is the better clay court player, and I think Thiem is also a more mobile player as well and possesses a ton of power from the backhand side with his one-handed backhand. Also ended up making the final of the French Open, got smacked again by Nadal, but he still made it, and that counts for something. So Thiem's used to these long runs at Roland Garros, and I think that he will be able to handle Del Potro, who, as a great player, still struggles with mobility due to his frame, and I think that Dominic Thiem will be able to win that one. Moving on, you have Tsitsipas against Federer. This might be a bold call here, but I'm actually going with Federer. I know that Tsitsipas did beat him in the Australian Open, but they actually did match up recently, and Federer ended up getting the best of that situation. Actually, no, they were supposed to, but never mind. That Federer ended up withdrawing. But overall, I think that Federer will look for revenge after what happened in the Australian Open. I definitely think that as of right now, Tsitsipas is in better form because of the fact that he has played a lot of clay matches and he has gone to the final multiple times. But Tsitsipas did lose to Djokovic, did lose to Nadal in the finals of those matches. I think that he's capable of stepping up in this spot. This will be a great match. But I think Federer, at the end of the day, if he is 100% healthy, which he states that he is, I think that Federer will be too much to handle. And I think that Federer would win a very tough 5-set match there. So I'd lean to Federer on that one. And moving on, Nadal versus Nishikori. No offense to Nishikori, but Nadal's in a different league when it comes to clay. So I will lean to Nadal there. So the semifinals, you end up having chalk. And I know that a lot of people get bothered by it, but at the end of the day, I don't think anybody can really knock off these four guys. I think Federer is definitely the most vulnerable out of these four people because of the fact that he has skipped Roland Garros since 2015, and now he's decided to come back, and he has to also deal with Tsitsipas. But I think Federer will relatively coast to this matchup against Tsitsipas, and I think Tsitsipas will have to struggle against whether it's Wawrinka or Cilic, and I think Federer will be able to handle beating Tsitsipas after he will have a lot less time on the court. So in that matchup, you end up having Nadal versus Federer, and that I think is the matchup that everybody dreams of in the semifinals there. And you also have Novak Djokovic versus Dominic Thiem in the 1v4 in the semifinals there. But I'll start out at the top again. With Djokovic and Thiem, I originally liked Team a couple weeks ago, but at the end of the day, Djokovic just beat Team in a head-to-head matchup on clay, and I have to go with Djokovic on that one. So for me, I'm going to lean to Djokovic to make the final as he beats Team in the semis, and I will also lean to Nadal just beating Federer. No offense to Federer. Federer has been great, but overall, Nadal is the king of clay for a reason, and I am not going to assume that Nadal loses to Federer in this one. So I would take Nadal, which means you have a 1v2 in the final, and you have Djokovic versus Nadal. And I'm sorry that I'm not going to shock any people here. I'm taking Rafael Nadal. I think that if you don't take Nadal, then, I mean, there's some plus value if you don't take him. But realistically, I think everybody knows the only thing stopping Nadal is injury, as he looked tremendous in his last tournament. He got revenge against Tsitsipas as he ended up winning that match relatively convincingly in straight sets. So for me, I think he also beat Djokovic in 3 sets. So that also helps. I know that he lost a middle set there, but he ended up winning those 2 sets 6-0 and 6-1. No, Nadal's fantastic. He's another level. People talk about Federer's dominance on grass, but Nadal's dominance on clay is probably the most dominant thing anyone's ever seen in tennis, and I'm not stepping in his way. So my pick to win the entire thing, like most people will have, is on Rafael Nadal. If you want to find more value and you don't want to lay a minus 120 or even lay a plus 120 or 150 or whatever on Djokovic, if you want an outsider's shot, I would take Dominic Thiem, as I think that Thiem has a shot to potentially make a serious run. I don't think he'll beat Nadal. I think that's the problem. I think he could beat Djokovic, but I don't think Nadal would lose to Thiem because I think Nadal would keep too many things in play. And we saw that French Open final matchup a couple of years ago, and Nadal absolutely smacked him. So for me, I personally would lean to Nadal against him as well, but it can give you a hedging opportunity. Now, if you want a potential huge, like future, long shot with some potential value there, as I pull up the future market now on 5-dimes. Overall, a lot of huge underdogs here. I mean, Nadal's a minus 110 on 5-dimes. Djokovic is plus 285. Thiem is plus 750. Tsitsipas is plus 2,200. Nadal is plus 2,800. Zverev is plus 4,000. Del Potro is plus 5,000. And everybody else after that is at plus 10,000 or higher. In terms of 10,000 or higher, I really don't see it. I just simply don't think that any of those players have a serious shot of making a run. If you wanted to know my thoughts, I think that Del Potro at plus 5,000 possesses some value. Zverev at plus 4,000, I don't want to touch. I think Zverev is definitely the most likely to get upset out of the top roughly 7 players in terms of odds. But overall, I think Del Potro could beat Thiem hypothetically, and I think that he could hypothetically beat Djokovic. Is it likely? No. But honestly, if you're going for a long shot there, then I would lean to Del Potro. But overall, if you want another serious long shot here, Cilic has a very tough section. Plus 15,000 is very good value, though. Overall, don't really see much for value there. But my long shot would be on Del Potro plus 5,000. And if you want a small sprinkle of a player who has a potential to actually make the final, I'd go with Thiem at plus 750. But overall, I'm going with Nadal, and I think Nadal will beat Djokovic in the final. But that's going to do it for this installment of the French Open breakdown here with Scott's Tennis Selections. And good luck to all of you, and I hope that all of you have a very profitable tournament at Roland Garros. Bye, everyone.